I don't think I'm allowed to say this, and it will probably get flagged or removed because for some unknown reason, whenever we talk about gender identity disorder, we're not allowed to link it to other mental illnesses. If you do that, you're demonized, ostracized, and ridiculed. The media tries its best to disassociate these things, even though it's clear that a person who demands that they are clearly something they're not is exhibiting the same symptoms as the ones you'd see in some other major mental illnesses. Let me give an example. If I walked around saying that I see myself as something I'm not, it would be a cognitive deficit. And these deficits are major symptoms found in schizophrenia. Cognitive deficits affect things like perception and reasoning. Perception is the organization, identification, and interpretation of sensory information. Basically, it's you determining what can be sensed in reality using sight, sound, and your other senses. Reasoning is being able to consciously make sense of things using logic. Basically, that's you being able to figure things out logically. If we look at gender identity disorder, we realize that both perception and reasoning are not being utilized. If all of your senses and the senses of those around you say that you are one thing, but your mind is telling you something else, then your perception is off. If logic dictates that you are one thing, but your mind is unable to come to the same conclusion, then your reasoning is off. That's a clear sign that you are displaying cognitive deficits. And these are major symptoms of schizophrenia. But if I mention this, I'm wrong. How about this? If I walked around and presented myself one way, and then one day my entire personality changed and I started to alter my voice to fit this new persona and put myself through life-threatening surgery to help me match this new persona that exists only in my head, it would normally be linked to a mental disorder that we call Dissociative Identity Disorder, or DID. And that's too much to say, so I'm just going to use DID from here on out. People with DID can often exhibit other problems such as depression, anxiety, and self-harm. And we see a lot of problems similar to these with people who we list as gender identity disordered. I don't even think that makes sense. People that we list as having gender identity disorder. But if we even attempt to discuss the correlation, we're ignored and suppressed. According to many psychiatrists, most of the people they treat who claim to have a gender identity disorder have experienced childhood abuse, and childhood abuse is one of the main causes of schizophrenia and DID. But despite all of these links, we're not allowed to discuss gender identity disorder as a mental condition that needs to be examined and treated. Instead, we ignore the mental condition aspect and offer no real help to people who claim to have this disorder. Why are we ignoring this? Maybe it's because there are a lot of people making lots of money performing life-altering and life-threatening surgeries on people who are willing to pay top dollar to have their issues addressed. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to change yourself and change your gender, so maybe the people collecting that money don't want their industry to dry up. I don't really know. But I do know that it's funny that when really valid points like the ones I just brought up are brought to the forefront, organizations like YouTube, Facebook, and others quickly remove the content stating that it encourages hatred or glorifies violence. I recently put up a video talking about gender identity disorder within our society and comparing it to other mental illnesses like schizophrenia, and YouTube removed my video. According to them, my comparing gender identity disorder to schizophrenia was me encouraging hatred and glorifying violence. I don't know where they got that from. And it's funny because on YouTube, I constantly find derogatory music videos that demean women and men and glorify violence, clips and trailers promoting movies and TV shows that encourage hatred and glorify violence, full-length movies and television shows about glorifying violence and encouraging hatred, clips and trailers for video games that glorify violence, instructional videos that glorify violence, clips from news programs that glorify and encourage violent war against people in other countries, and videos encouraging hatred for heterosexual men who don't follow along with the societal construct known as monogamy. Now, don't get me wrong, I love playing video games that glorify violence, I love watching movies that glorify violence, and I listen to some really violent death metal. So I'm not commenting about whether those things should or shouldn't exist. But I do recognize when a big corporation puts in a practice that silences some people while simultaneously giving a voice to people who agree with them, or giving a voice to big corporations who pay them regardless of what message they push. The big record companies, movie studios, video game developers, and news organizations never have their content flagged or removed, despite the hateful and violent things that they promote, because they generate revenue and because they aren't annoying the ones in power who profit from gender identity disorder. They're not annoying the people who are trying to push gender identity disorder, and they're not annoying the people who belong to the same group as the people suffering from gender identity disorder. So I don't think companies like YouTube really care about protecting people's feelings. I believe they're in the business of stifling conversation, controlling the narrative, spreading their own propaganda, and of course making money. And so of course they'll do whatever they have to support the people in power, and that includes silencing people like me. Go fuck yourself, YouTube. Oh, and if you want to hear what I originally said, links to my podcasts are down in the description. At least you have some platforms that don't try to stifle people's thoughts.